The next nice one, which harnesses some of the same insights, and I suppose that's the way companies learn. You know, we'd been making progress on the Allergan side. We launched Lumigan, which is bimatoprost 0.03 as a prostamide. Of course, at the time, it was a big dispute. At that time, Pharmacia was the owner of Xylatan. I remember calling my friend Hassan at the time, because, of course, we had patent disputes whether Lumigan indeed was a prostamide or was it a prostaglandin. We, of course, had a point of view. So that was approved in 2001, and very potent IOP lowering, probably the best in all of the drugs that are available. But we did know that about 10% of the patients ended up with transient hyperemia. And the way to describe it would be like if I was drinking one of my favorite things from Scotland, but a little too much. You end up with that slightly red eye the next morning. And that's what you ended up, about 10% of the cases for about a month with these patients. And so then we started applying the same thinking that we learned from Allergan. Could we reduce the dose and ideally also the side effect? And so we came up with 0.01. And once again, we were able to show similar IOP lowering, again due to pH, due to formulation. And very fortunately, these days, you can see in the label very, very low rates of discontinuation of 0.01. And basically, it's all about the hyperemia. To be fair to our competitors, by that time, Xylatan was marketed by Pfizer, because Pfizer had bought the assets from Pharmacia. And, you know, fair's fair. They used to call our product Tomatogan, right? Well, happily, the tomatoes or tomatoes disappeared. And now you can imagine how well this product is doing. And happily, for where I sit as CEO, patent expiry 2027. Now, another great thing we came up with that really has nothing to do with Lumigan or eye drops was in the label of Lumigan, one of the things that was listed as in the warning section and side effect was this product, even more than Xylatan or Travatan from Alcon, lead to very long, thick, dark eyelashes. Now, given the company we are the Botox company, we kind of picked on our head of R&D and said, could you? And happily, 2.5 years later, that was my Christmas present from FDA. Now we have an indicated product, Latisse, for making your eyelashes longer, darker, and thicker. And the ladies in the room are all smiling. I can see that because it really works. And we've turned that into a nice product. So coming back to Lumigan, you can see, you know, tremendous growth due to eliminating the side effects and having a very potent drug. And I'll show you on the next chart, you know, today Lumigan in the light blue is the second largest by value glaucoma drop in the world, just about to overtake Travatan because they're in decline and we're still growing. And further down, you can see in light blue, Alphagan and Combigan being rated as numbers 3 and 4 in terms of glaucoma drops in the United States. Another example of drug delivery is really, you know, boring old product, dexamethasone. Well known for, had been used off-label, and this was really attacking the market of macular edema associated with retinal vein occlusion, uveitis, and really there the challenge was, how do you deliver this very well-known steroid and used concomitantly with other drugs these days, things for AMD, but how do you deliver it and avoid pressure spikes, which clearly, even though you can use glaucoma drops afterwards, still is very, very undesirable. You can see this is a company that, or a technology we bought in about 2000. In fact, it was really a downstream development from what Sesha showed at ALSA with the OcuCert device. The company we bought was Oculex, and you can see there's a stylized aspirin tablet blown up to supersize, so you can see how small that pellet is, which is a polymer that bioerodes over about a 2-month period and allows drug to be released slowly and enables about a 3 to 4 month treatment cycle in RVO and up to 6 months in uveitis. Really, that was our first platform. And then switching back to glaucoma, we asked ourselves the question, compliance, I was talking about, how do you get these old people really to take their drops? Well, it won't be for everybody, but there'll certainly be a subset of patients who would benefit from delivering drug to the eye, to the vitreous, and then you know it's there. And, you know, so come back and see me, hopefully, you know, 6 months plus if all this works out. So you can see this, again, stylized, first of all, the coin, then the Ozurdex, and you can see just how small the Bimatoprost SR implant is, and that kind of keys off Sesha's comments about more and more sophisticated manufacturing technologies. I love to tease my colleague, the head of manufacturing, say piece of cake to make that, right? Because he was already struggling at the beginning with the Ozurdex device, which we've now completely cracked. So all this led to great growth in ophthalmology, and you can see on the blue line, that's Allergan year to date. This is Novartis, which is Lucentis and Alcon together. And then if you exclude retina, I think I clicked on the wrong button. If you exclude retina and just stick to the mainstream ophthalmics, you can see we're really beginning to take off as Alcon has some issues with Travatan and their allergy franchise. So for the next couple of years, likely Allergan is going to be the fastest growing ophthalmic company in the world. Wrapping up, you can see all of this has been possible not only due to brilliance, but also good old-fashioned money. When I started, as Sesha said, was really a company that was an ophthalmic company, including surgical ophthalmic devices at that time. Very modest R&D budget, less than $100 million. And this year will be over $1 billion. And I think 5 years from now, will be about $1.5 billion in spend. About 16.5% R&D intensity. Of course, our ratio is affected by the fact that we're also in medical device. So if you strip the two apart, we're closer to the high teens, very high teens, when we think of pharmaceutical spend divided by sales of pharmaceuticals relative to medical device. One of the reasons we're able to invest so heavily was, if I go back to 2010 and 11, you can run your eye down the page. We actually had 7 FDA approvals in those 2 years. And of course, where I sit on the top of the house, I always like to say, to get to peak sales of a drug, you know, you're probably talking 5, 6 years. Depends what the device is, probably 3 or 4. But turned around, of course, this means we've got a lot of growth for the next 3, 4, 5 years. And then we have lots more great things coming, particularly this year. One of the other things that over time that we've done is not only having surgical or medical device technologies and then small molecule, but more and more we're moving into large molecule. And as we do that, of course, we're thinking about not only polymer engineering, but nanotechnology. And how do we kind of spread our interlocking technologies. Earlier on, Sesha and I were having a coffee together, and you can see lots of confluences from different fields, and that course becomes what the VC world calls the secret sauce, because you start counter-applying different technologies in a very interesting way that other people haven't thought of. So that's really our strategy. Everybody has the same thing in your organizations, to a funnel of how do you process opportunities. And really it's a mix of in-house, sometimes grabbing technology early, finish it, and then sometimes just buy it. This is the case of a small local company here in Carlsbad, a topical aesthetic skincare line, actually no API, all grass ingredients, or in-license from Switzerland, Molecular Partners, for a very interesting DARPin platform. And then just this last, well, today we actually put out the press release that we're cleared by FTC to acquire MAP Pharmaceuticals, which is a very interesting technology too. It's an inhaled dihydroergotamine, which basically converts a hospital-based IV treatment. Of course, Migranol, at the time sold by Sandoz, now Valiant, is a nasal delivery, a bit problematical. This inhaled version looks very, very promising, and hence why we spent $1 billion almost buying the company pre-approval, and we believe sales will peak at about $500 million. This is the device for Levodex and the Tempo inhaler depicted there. So in summary, it's all about getting products approved for us, constantly refueling the pipeline, and using our scale to be successful. So I hope you found some interesting things there, beyond the corporate context, some real live examples of how we've made drug delivery really improve products from the patient, but of course also from the company's point of view, creating a great platform for long-term growth. So I'd be very happy to, I think we still have probably 10 minutes for questions.
Can you speak maybe on general terms when you do a deal, like the recent deal with MAP, sort of what the equation is in terms of doing it earlier, maybe a lower price, higher risk versus later, better data, more certainty, higher price, kind of how that gets traded off?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing I would say is whenever we look at assets, we want to be pretty convinced that we're buying something that has really good long-term growth potential. You can see, given the company's run rate, to about 10%-ish growth. If we were to buy things that peter out really quickly, then I kind of get into what I call the sugar high, right? Where you feel real good for about a little bit, and then you get really hungry, and then you need another one, right? And we've watched, I don't want to throw too many stones, but some of the big companies serially having to acquire others to keep that growth rate going. We don't want to go there. Now answering the second part, and I'll answer it sort of specifically with MAP and then maybe more generally. In the case of MAP, we entered into a co-promote with them about 2+ years ago, whereby we would share the neurology channel. So they had the ability to launch their own sales force, and we already had ours. And of course, we realized that Botox chronic migraine and this migraine therapy, although completely different clinical indications, from a call point, they were almost bang on top of each other. So you can imagine tremendous economic benefit in terms of deploying your existing fixed asset base of Salesforce, commercial knowledge, all the conventions we visit. So we were partners. And of course, as time moved on, we liked more and more what we saw because our regulatory and engineering teams were working shoulder to shoulder. And I suppose then the next point was we realized that it would be probably wise to put in an offer prior to approval, whilst there was still some risk on the table. But of course, if we waited until day after, the price would have gone to there. Although, we think we paid a fair premium. And I say that because the other side got sued, by a law firm saying they hadn't, exercised their fiduciary duties, which I suppose these days happens frequently and is a very sad comment about the legal system in this country. And as a former, I like to throw a few rocks, right? I like to say, in fact, I'm fully recovered these days. I'm not a lawyer. So then on a more general phase or scheme, I think it's the famous "it depends what it is." In the case of this DARPin technology, we were so fascinated by that, we went very early indeed, because we saw just how big it could be. And if all works out, that platform could be several $1 billion in sales. And, you know, just look at Lucentis or currently the great success of Eylea from Regeneron. So some things that aren't so big, we tend to wait longer. And that's because being the ophthalmic, if I stick to that example, company we have the best distribution network in the world. So naturally, most people come to us first. And we have a reputation, because I insist upon it, of being quick. You know, the famous, you know, you throw something into one of those big pharmas and, you know, does it mean good or bad? Because you hear nothing. And it's like, come and see me next month, next month, next month. We tend to get to an answer pretty quickly, and that's because I came from there. I know how bad it is. And still today, I like to say, our job is to be a fast entrepreneurial company, and we got to get an answer and take risk. And so, you know, we'll have the odd lapse, but one of my BD colleagues is sitting here probably smiling, well, kind of, because he knows we got to get to an answer in a reasonable time that a small company would expect. So some things we wait much longer. Another example, the very opposite end of DARPin, was the in-license of where we actually acquired the asset from J&J, Lasticaf for allergy, 10 days before approval. So kind of the famous each case on its own, right? You can probably tell from my answer, we're pretty agnostic also which business we're in, because people sometimes say, well, you know, is the aesthetic business going to be 40% in 5 years? I say, I have no idea. They're kind of surprised by my answer. I say organically I have an idea, but we just follow the opportunity. If something great comes along, we'll grab it and run with the wind.
I just want to congratulate you on your IP victories, but the follow-up is, it's like, I don't think those weren't without risk. I mean, it's like, I'm an intellectual property lawyer, so it's like, I understand the
everything looking back, everything's
was this something that you said like, well, 2022 is an easy take, or is this something that you were prepared to take the worst case scenario? Because this is something that plays out in all companies. It's like, I mean, and that's a bigger risk. It's like,
yeah, no, I think always, you know, we're all wiser looking in the rear view mirror. And, you know, the old story is, how do you learn from all of those experiences? Hopefully more of them being positive. The really bad ones, of course, we learn even more. I would have thought, you know, if I go back to even 2003 or 4, I was kind of hoping Alphagan would be around, you know, for at least, you know, up till 2010. You know, I wasn't so confident because we knew all the challenges we'd go through. And when we started winning the early cases, of course, we had some very strong arguments that get challenged, you know, and then get challenged again at appeals court. We've even been threatened all the way up to the Supreme Court, which is fine. And you get better and better at it because of the certain parallel arguments. So I would say it was only probably literally by about 2010 that we realized just how good life was going to be. And of course, in turn, that enabled us to really keep pouring money into the R&D investments and to be really complimentary of my colleagues there. You know, the rate of success is extraordinary. You know, we've had the odd failure that I've carefully avoided talking about. No, they're public. You know, we all make our mistakes, but we've tended to make more good decisions than, with hindsight, things that just didn't pan out. And I think part of it is just very deep knowledge of, if you like, the clinical basis and science of a small disease area. And then secondly, you know, longevity of people, good mix, you know, people like Seychelles, who's been with us for, what's 5 years, 6? And then some people, you know, have been in the lab for 20. And those guys I like to tease because I say by now, you know, having looked at glaucoma drugs for 20 years, hopefully you can tell me the difference between a dove and an elephant, right? And the ones in the middle, that's where they really get paid, right? Is this way or that way? And that's called, in French, savoir-faire, right? It's that knowledge that you accumulate. Thank you.